Hello and welcome back to AI Dungeon 2. If you don't know, if you've never seen AI Dungeon, I've made a video with one of my stories a couple weeks ago, maybe a month, maybe 2 months by this point. I'll link you to it in the description. You can look that up. At the start of it, I sort of explain what it's all about. Once you've done that, or if you know what the game is about already, I thought about this prompt that I'm going to present to you in a minute. For a while, the idea came to me a couple weeks ago, and I've sort of fleshed it out a bit, and I hope it goes well. I hope we can stay at least somewhat on track for at least like 15, 20 minutes, hopefully. And I hope this is going to be an interesting story. I plan to do this, basically I plan to do all sort of AI Dungeon stories as one-off things, in the way that they're not planned for any specific date. Whenever I come up with a good idea, well, at least an idea that sounds good to myself, I plan to sort of make them and put them out relatively regularly, like once a month, sort of. And for now, this fits relatively well with Tales of Vesperia going on a break, and the project that I'd want to not replace it, but that I want to put in its slots until I get the motivation to play it back, not quite being ready yet for this week. I'm just going to put this out on that slot on Monday. Well, today, maybe, if you're watching this. All right, now to present you my prompt. I'm going to read through it here, down below. Pretty much I just have to press enter and then the AI will start their work. So I'd like to be able to react quickly to that and not have to read all of it beforehand. So let's go. You live in the year 2050. 2 decades ago, a strange mutation of the human body changed humanity at its core. Over the centuries, humans had gotten better and better at replacing parts of their bodies to prolong their life, but up until the year 2032, the death of the brain was the only thing that truly meant there was no other way to keep on living. That changed. On the 24th of February that year, a date gone down in history, Alexander Farewell, a poor gravekeeper in rural England, was in the process of relocating some recently buried corpses when he realized that one of them was emitting some kind of warmth. Freaked out, he threw the body back into the hole and went back home to tell his family about the strange thing he had experienced. Well, word travels fast, and only a week later, officials had arrived at the graveyard and collected the body. After some gruesome experimentation, they discovered that the corpses of people who had been affected by a certain mutation could be reanimated, if buried in the earth at a certain point after their death. While there was no way to artificially cause the mutation, it was getting more and more common within the population, and after about 10 years, they had come up with certain guidelines/rules concerning this process. 1. Only the parts of the body that were to be brought back to life had to be buried. 1a. For this, the organs had to be dead beforehand. 2. While some organs could be brought back to full functionality, others couldn't. 3. The organs that are affected by this are the brain and the heart. 3a. Those organs would gain an additional 20 years on average under normal circumstances. 4. Underground, the body would enter a comatose state, but would die again after a few hours had passed if left there. 5. For now, there was no way to tell whether this mutation had taken place in the human or not. Over time, as the percentage of humanity affected by it shifted to the majority, companies started to pop up, trying to make a profit of it. Mostly comprised of doctors and scientists, these companies would offer people who were fearing death, either due to old age, illnesses, or otherwise, the opportunity to extend their lifespan via multiple ways, reaching from simple procedures such as heart and brain revigorations, to complex ones such as full brain transplantations, where the super rich could, if their morals allowed them to, take their brain and transplant it into the body of another healthy human being. The governments mostly turned a blind eye to these companies as they hoped to profit from them themselves, so they were allowed to flourish in this new environment. You are Max Farewell, the son of Alexander Farewell, who, only 16 in 2032, inspired by his father's discovery, studied hard to become a scientist to hopefully provide these operations that are currently limited to the wealthy minority for everyone. You finished your studies and recently started work at a business called BrainTrain, an innovative company that made it their goal to reach as many people as possible, so they built a fully functional hospital into a train, equipped with everything necessary to bring their knowledge to wherever the train tracks would take them. It's a normal Monday morning when one of your colleagues calls out to you. And this is the prompt that I've gone with and that we'll experience now. Let's see where it takes us. Hey Max, it's me, Mr. Anderson. You look over and see him standing in front of the door to your office, holding a clipboard. You ask him, good morning, or you say to him, let's go like this. Good morning, Mr. Anderson. What can I do for you today? Well, it's just that we've got a patient who's been experiencing symptoms similar to yours. He's a young man named John Doe. He lives in the city and is suffering from memory loss. Huh, interesting. So we're apparently suffering from symptoms. Memory loss, apparently. Okay. All right. So, story-wise, I would assume then that we are also currently partly not experimenting, but researching whether there is any way to... Okay, I know where we're taking this. You had been researching ever since you found out about your illness, in the hopes of figuring out a way to determine whether the mutations, whether there was a way to safely tell whether the mutation had occurred in a human. You hadn't gotten to that point yet, though, so you weren't confident in operating on yourself. You decided to go and speak to John Doe. Let's see if we can figure something out. You went to the waiting room and found John, looking very tired. He yawned as you approached the desk. You introduced yourself and asked him a few simple questions about what was going on with him. John explained his predicament. He woke up one morning suffering from amnesia. He didn't know who he was or how he got there. The hospital had done all kinds of tests on him, but nothing had come up with any results. Okay, I have an idea about the cause of this. You say... yeah, I should type it, not just say it. I have an idea about what could cause this. Recently, there have been more and more cases of brain transplantations gone wrong, where the person whose brain was to be transplanted into another body lost all their memories after the operation had taken place. Okay. You explain this to John, who seems unconvinced. John asks, "Could you fix me? I mean, can you help me get my memories back?" You hold out your hands and begin to think about your father. What would he have done in this situation? Oops. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, so you can't ask him for advice anymore. You decide to try and help Mr. Doe, but you have to explain to him that the operation required to do so would be very risky. If you are right, and you have a few theories that you've come up with in order to determine where the mutation had taken place. One of them was that the affected parts were the organs themselves. If you are right about that, as well as being right about Mr. Doe's memory loss being due to a faulty operation, it would be a relatively simple task to just repeat the procedure to bring his memories back. If either of your assumptions were wrong, though, it could very well cost him his life. You strongly advise against the operation. You explain that if he was just to wait, then all his memories will come back on their own. Yeah, that mostly happens. Sometimes it doesn't. Where do we take this? However, if he truly needed his memories back as soon as possible, there are a couple of things you could do for him. Let's be vague here. One of them was to prepare him for the operation that would take place, since he wouldn't remember a thing about it. Since the operation requires the brain to be dead, there obviously would have to be the person being operated on would have to die first. Not something most people would want to experience without proper preparations. The other and much more dangerous option would be for you to operate on him. Okay. I'm not entirely sure what option 1 was. Oh, I guess option 1 was just preparing him and then letting a professional who's got lots and lots of experience in this take care of it. Or, well, okay, I know where we take this. You'd never done the operation on your own before. But Mr. Doe could be a very helpful subject in your research. If you manage to complete the operation securely, now let's just go there. If you manage to complete the operation and he indeed does gain back his memories from before, you would be one step closer to confirming your theories. On the other hand, even if you were to succeed, there is a good chance that Mr. Doe would proceed to sue you for the risky operation you put him through without his knowledge. You would have to consult your parents on this decision, but they were both doctors. Would they even be able to back you up if you were questioned? What? I mean, one of them's dead, as we've previously established. Let's try that again, shall we? Let's see if the AI comes up with something better. Give me something, AI. It was a hard decision, but ultimately you decided that the better option was to operate on him. You explained all this in some detail to him. He seemed suitably unconcerned about any of it. The preparation for the operation lasted 3 days and had to be done in complete secret because your superiors would never allow the operation to take place. On Thursday at 9 p.m., after everyone gone to sleep in their carriage, you wake up Mr. Doe and bring him with you to the operating room. The eye is doing okay so far. Okay. Your medical school professor and some of your students had assisted you in setting everything up. They would all witness the operation as well as being able to keep an eye on Mr. Doe's vital signs during it. All right. Sure. We brought them onto the train in secret. My medical school professor and some of my students. You know what? No. Have another try, AI. In the actual procedure, you'd have to be prepared to act immediately after the incision was made. You scrub up well and get to work. I forgot about having to kill him beforehand for a bit there, but alright. Once Mr. Doe had fallen asleep, you inject him with a special mixture called the company's brew that painlessly stopped his vital organs from working. You brought him back to your carriage that had enough space to bury just one body in a flower bed, as they were called. You put Doe in a black cloth bag, then you carry him into the flower bed in the carriage and throw him in. You cover him with soil. The throw him in part sounds a bit unprofessional, but sure, let's go with that. From this point onwards, you would have to pay very close attention to the body, as to not miss the right time to dig him back up. You checked on him several times a day, but your main defense would be to watch the windows of the clock in the carriage workshop. What? My main defense would be to watch the windows of the clock. Alright. You know what? The second attempt was better twice before, so let's see. Good. The next day, you check on the body and you find it to be perfectly preserved. The brain had not decayed at all, which meant that the company's brew was definitely effective. Alright. The perfect moment had arrived. But you had to wait until the evening to bring him back to the operating room. Certainly a risk, but there is nothing to be done about it. You waited. Did it say when? You waited 8 hours. Before bringing him with you to the operating table. The only thing you had to do now is inject him with an antidote. Another one of the company's creations that would accelerate the awakening from the comatose state that the patients were in. Alright, shut up, Sai. The operation was the same as the first one, in that he would not remember any of it. You were in luck. You hadn't waited too long, and Mr. Doe woke up 30 minutes later. The first thing he said to you afterwards was, "I'm thirsty." In recent years, John had been working in a hospital aboard a ship that belonged to the company. The only thing he remembered was a large explosion, then nothing. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how that comes in with the "I'm thirsty," but there. Okay. it is normal for it to take a couple, to take a few hours for all of the memories to come back. But he remembered more than he did before, which was a good sign for the operation's success. Okay, we're straight moving on. Okay. And so he went on to the next patient, an old man. He was missing half of his body, which had been replaced by a metallic one, heavily cybernetically enhanced. Okay. Maybe not quite yet. Roll that back. Give me one more try. He also became very upset when he learned you were planning to dispose of his body. I wasn't planning to dispose of his body. Yeah, sure, I put him into a flower bed, but other than that, in the next few hours, he would learn how the whole complex worked. Okay, that makes sense. As his memory came back bit by bit, he told you that he himself was a scientist who had experimented in order to find out more about the mutation. The incident with the gravekeeper had been an accident and not a premeditated act. Well, I would assume so, of course. I mean, technically, you could have still thought, well, the government placed the body there. But no, complete coincidence. You shared parts of your knowledge with him, and in the end, you exchanged contact information to help each other in case either of you finds the answer to all of your questions. Turns out his name was actually Hans, and he was from the year 2287. Wait, that's maybe not. His name is Hans, that's fine. We can ignore that. He seemed relieved, I guess. He agreed with what you had done and would have acted the same way. You say your goodbyes and move on with your day. The following day, you visit a local university to look up on the human brain. You're in a library and find what you need in just a couple of hours. One of the books where do we go? Had information about a recent discovery that allowed you to try some new things during your experiments with John. He's not called John anymore. Well, you know what? In this distant future, every patient is called John. The books also mentioned that the procedure was still in its early stages, so you had to be careful not to hurt him. You decided to do your experiments in stages, starting with dilating his pupils. Okay. Let's see where the AI takes this. This was a slow process, but the effects were immediately noticeable. The man became extremely weak and tired very quickly. From dilating his pupil. Okay. Sure. This was a clear sign for the man not having been... You know what? Actually, let's go the opposite way. Men to have been affected by the mutation. Normal people's pupils wouldn't... normal people wouldn't grow so weak from their pupils being dilated. We're kind of going off track here, but sure. You had created a mantis with your experiments as described in the book. You decided to keep experimenting on him to see what else you could accomplish. We're kind of going off track with what our motivations are, Max, but sure. Go on. What else can we accomplish? Each new effect would be tested separately to see if it had any negative side effects on a man. And? Did it? It took about a week until he could perform simple movements again, and over the course of another week, all of his muscles had regenerated. You couldn't believe it. John Doe was back to full health. Alright. Cool. So we've perfected the operation. Okay, sure. You had perfected the operation. Now all you had to do was to find a way to present this information to the world without getting crucified for human experimentation or fired for disregarding work practices. The most difficult part. Luckily, it all came together for you that day. The next day, you proceeded with the plan and showed John his new abilities. He grew to like his talents. Maybe not. Try another one. You'd keep the information contained to yourself and your family for now, but you were sure that you would make the world aware of it one day. Okay, I like that more. Everyone's just called John Doe. I like that little detail, to be honest. It probably works well with the AI. Oh, I know where we're taking this. A few weeks later, in a call with Hans, you let part of the information slip. Will he notice it? He seemed surprised at first, but quickly became excited when you explained how you had cured the man of his paralysis. Oh, he was paralyzed. I didn't know that. That explains why he's back to full health. Okay. Unfortunately, Hans couldn't quite grasp the consequences of sharing this information with the world. So he did. He leaked the information to the press himself, which led to a massive panic about Mantis, especially after several crimes were linked to the cure within a month. Okay. Still sort of makes sense. I guess Mantis is just the procedure itself. Hans was seen as a traitor by you. And eventually, organizations found out about what he had done and put him on a blacklist to make sure he never comes close to such crucial information ever again. Poor Hans. You were never able to get in contact with him again and deleted your book's written version after a dozen or so copies had been printed. What book? I like the first part of that sentence. The second part is a bit confusing. You know what? Stop here. However, he at least seems to have kept his mouth shut about your involvement in the whole affair. The day before your final examination at the university. No. Actually. Okay, I like that fault. We were a university student. We technically have finished our studies, but we took another course. Now we have our final examination. That's sort of, we took that next to our job, sort of as, after hours we studied for it, and etc. Okay, and then we tell our superiors what happened with John Doe. This could go one of two ways, I could imagine. Let's see where the AI takes it. You didn't explain how you had done it, as that was still a closely guarded secret to this day. You graduated with flying colors and got the topic of discussion about your research during your speech. Okay, that way, sure. Go on. You used it to explain why that there were still things out of reach for the human mind. The key, you explained, was to focus and use the pure human elements to get a bigger advantage over the experiments. Okay. Sort of still makes sense. With newfound motivation, you went back to your job at BrainTrain and proceeded with your work, sure. 3 years pass. Your actions have made you a bit of a celebrity in your field. You're even contacted for advice on how to improve certain products and devices by companies. That's cool, yeah, sure. Let's go with that. But where do we go next? You know what? We're close to where we can end it. Your dream had come true. Due to your achievements, medical procedures had become much cheaper and affordable for the common man. This includes procedures that enhance the mind. As a result, for the first time in history, more and more people were going into mental sciences, which of course led to better advances in technology and scientific breakthroughs. In the year 2055, we finally found out what it was that caused the mutation, mutation, and where it had manifested itself, or how. Let's see what you can come up with, AI. In different ways in various people. Some strains of the virus had mutated during an immune response of the host into a new strand of DNA which the body integrated itself with. Oh, interesting. Something I would expect scientists to be able to find quicker if it was actually a mutation. But nonetheless, something I'm happy with as a conclusion. With this newfound information, operations were finally almost safe. And you could check whether you yourself were affected by the mutation. So, is there still hope for us? You had learned that the infection had integrated itself with various and sundry pieces of your genetic information, such as, but not limited to, your brain, nerve endings, vocal cords, eyes, hair, the list goes on. Okay. That meant doing the procedure on yourself should be safe. You gathered the best of the best that BrainTrain had to offer, assembled them, and explained to them how they would have to operate on you. Sure. I'm not sure if I can do this. Wendy. I'm not sure if I can do this, you heard Wendy say nervously. Just do what I'll tell you and it'll be fine. You smile at her, trying to reassure her. 2 hours later, you were lying on the operating table, getting injected with the company's brew. Okay, now that's not that one. That's not logical. Anesthetic. You were wheeled into the operating room and placed on the table. Wendy and the rest stood around you, looking as sad as you were somewhat nervous. Why are they looking sad? Everything's fine, isn't it? The operation went smoothly. Nice. Before you knew it, it was over. You felt a little strange afterwards, but nothing to worry about. Oh, you're alive, Wendy said when you began to move your fingers. That fits perfectly for some reason. That's great. Everything had gone well. And you went on for years and years, helping humanity get to terms with its new life. The end. Okay. Good. That's the story of how we as Max Farewell found out about this curious mutation in the human body, solved the mysteries behind it, and became a living legend, basically. A much nicer ending than our first story was. I mean, the first story had a brilliant ending. It was just not a very happy ending, if you know what I mean. If you haven't checked that out, definitely go and do so. It was a great story as well. Maybe slightly more illogical at times, but certainly surprising, at least until the end. Okay. Thank you for watching this episode. If there's anything else because I like to come up with ideas about the worlds I create and stuff like that. So if there's any sort of questions you would have about how certain things would work in this fictional world of mine, then just ask them to me in the comments. I'll explain to you exactly how they work. Unless it's heavily medical, then I probably won't be able to. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.